I remind the captain, the starship enters the zone. Now entering the neutral zone.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Neutral Zone. We are talking about Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Episode 4, and I am here, as always, in the Neutral Zone with my friend John. John, how's it going?
It's going great. As you can see, I am displaying my new, I should get some kind of compensation, my Discovery sweatshirt hoodie. Looks very stylish. My kids hate it when I wear it, but I don't care. I think it looks great. So it's only the second piece of apparel I've ever bought with a Star Trek logo on it. So that just shows you how, how impressed I am with Discovery.
It looks swanky, John.
I'm sorry?
It looks swanky, John.
Yes,
it looks
thank
very
you.
swanky. You're pulling it off, so it's fine.
Well, if you know me, you know when it comes to fashion, no one knows fashion better than me. And if you know that, you know that's a bunch of BS. So that's kind of fun.
I was going to say that's what I say. That's what I say every time Fashion Week happens. Is where's John Ondo and all this?
What's John wearing? I'm wearing Discovery today,
wearing?
Josh. I'm wearing. It's good. It's playful. It's great for those things. Josh, we actually had people watch us.
Hey, cool. What did they say, John?
They did. There was not that much swearing, but I got a couple different comments from some of our previous podcasts, and I apologize. I'm going to butcher probably this name, Qualis Gordon, and if I got your name wrong, I'm sorry. But he gave us a rather lengthy response because we had talked about we were really kind of frustrated. Why is Philippa Georgiou back in Section 31 and being trusted with all these things? He had a couple comments that he thinks that that Starfleet rewarded her because she killed Lorca. And so that was part of it. He also thinks because, I thought this was an interesting theory, that kind of like using her like a mole, but she doesn't know it, in the sense that they just kind of sent her off to do whatever, figuring she'll get in trouble, and they'll be able to find trouble because she'll be in the middle of it. So I thought, that's not a half bad theory, you know. We'll see if
or maybe it's a 23rd century and on thing, that when you do something awfully wrong, horribly wrong, and then you redeem yourself somehow, it's not like what happens in the American justice system where your sentence gets reduced.
Right.
But you actually get rewarded in the Star Trek universe. Let me give you, for instance, Star Trek 3, rather. Kirk steals the Enterprise and blows up a starship, property of the Federation. He saves the planet from the whales in Star Trek 4 and gets his ship back. So, you know, he might as well.
We'll see if this theory plays out, Josh. If Spock did indeed kill 3 people, but because he saves 50, well, you know, it all kind of worked out. So I don't know.
Well, he gets promoted. Yeah, he gets promoted. I think he's only a lieutenant right now. That's how he gets promoted to lieutenant commander. He only killed 3 people, but he saved like 40 or 1,000. So let's give him a commission.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe that's just how the Star Trek universe works. Yeah, sure. Philippa Georgiou is a evil empress in the mirror universe, but she kind of got rid of a small problem for us. So let's promote her to Section 30. Maybe that's just how they work in Star Trek.
She gets a lot of hits on Instagram, so you know we got to keep her around. Yeah. I don't know, but hey, John Gonzalez says he mentions last week. You mentioned the shoehorning, the whole thing with Burnham and Spock, and why do we have to always jam something into the Spock character? And he says it's as if the writers are throwing a lot of ideas on the screen and see what works. And there seems to be a little bit of this, and the thing we keep mentioning on Star Trek on this season of Discovery is to remember Alex Kurtzman is the executive producer, but Burke, and I cannot remember the other showrunner, who wrote the majority of last season and ran the first 5 episodes of this season. So when you watch and you see the opening credits, you'll see their names on there. They were dismissed from Discovery right around a show break at episode 5. So I do think, and we'll see about this, these really, like, again, full-on faucets pouring out all these storylines. I wonder if that's going to come to an end starting in maybe episode 6 or 7 if Kurtzman starts, getting those cleared off. Star Trek is about putting a fire out each show, which they did in this episode. We'll get to in a second. And it's like some episodes they don't have a fire to put out. It's like they're putting out all these little fires, and that does get boring. I want the crew put out a big fire. So nice comment from John.
Well, let me give you my opinion here. I think one of the better things about the episode 4 here that we're talking about is that they didn't have 50,000 plot lines.
They kept it pretty simple.
Basically, they had an A and a B story, and the A story, of course, was the big planetoid thing, and Saru, which was linked together.
Right.
And then the B line was was Tilly and the Stamets and and the whole blobby thing. Yeah, and I like that. I like that there were basically only 2 stories. I mean, they didn't really. I mean, they kind of touched on the Spock stuff and with the number 1 coming on, and they touched on it, I guess. So there was a third C line, but when they keep jumping back between like the Klingons and the Spock stuff and the spore drive and the Pike thing and all this and that and the Angel coming, it was it's just like, it's almost shocking. It's almost a little too shocking to watch.
A couple of quick ones here. James Strait says, and this is in reference actually, Josh, to our Star Trek, I think it was the original series podcast, which you can catch on our YouTube and Patreon channel. He says, to my credit, an everlasting shame, I got every question right. We had a quiz about Star Trek, except the number of lens flares. So congratulations, Jane, because I got that wrong too. And then Trek Casting on Instagram told us they love Discovery too, because we say we are a pro-Discovery podcast. And we're not the only ones out there. We're not the only ones out there.
I gotta tell you, one of my favorite things. I love Christopher Pike. I think they're doing his character absolute justice.
Anson Mount's amazing.
Really like
I think
watching
he's
him.
Great.
Yeah,
and they're writing him really well. I think they're writing everybody really well in this season.
I do too.
And I guess that kind of brings us into, let's start talking about an Obol for Charon, which was episode 4. And you've already heard we like this episode. This felt a lot better than episode 3. But let's start off at the beginning, Josh, and you and I had a brief moment where we talked about that. Number 1, and the old school, a little bit old school iPad. You noticed that too, I saw.
Yeah, well, I mean, you always have Yeoman in the original series. You always have Yeoman Rand bringing this giant iPad to Kirk to sign, and it looked just like. I mean, that was really neat how it looked just like it, but it had the sort of modern iPad screen on it. Yeah. I thought they did that. I noticed. I was like, oh, that's neat. That was really a
very
neat
nice
prop that they had. And it was only on screen for like 5 seconds, but man, it was a great prop. It was a great thing they did.
I also applaud number 1 for an excellent choice of food in the replicator, with jalapeno sauce and a cheeseburger.
Hamburger with a habanero sauce. Yeah, what did he say? You want lighter fluid with that or something?
Maybe they've made it healthy in the future, but let's all hope they haven't, because that was just great. There will be cheeseburgers in the 23rd century. This is a fabulous thing.
Right.
So we also found out a couple things about the Enterprise. We've been kind of left off on with it getting fixed. That you do have a chief engineer, and it's I wrote it down phonically. Now I can't remember. It's like French. It's
Deluvio, I think is the name. Deluvio.
Yeah. And a little nod to Scotty, where Pike says, will the Enterprise ever have another engineer who loves her that much, or whatever he said. And so, and the little thing about the hologram communicators being pulled out, there seems to be a checklist in the writer's room that they have that's like, these are the things we have to explain or get rid of this season, and they're slowly trying to work through the list, the uniforms, this and that. We're going to talk about the spore drive in a minute, but it seems to be the holographic communicators were one of the things they had to give us an explanation and get rid of them. So now we know there's no more I guess there won't be any more holographic phones in the on Discovery.
Again, if you recall in Deep Space Nine, there was a holographic communicator emitter behind the captain's chair on the Defiant, and they used it for 1 season, and then they got rid of it.
I'll show my ignorance. I didn't know that because I did lose track of the later years of Star Trek IX as the Defiant got more involved. But I believe you. So the next thing we have is the Discovery getting caught by the big planet to download all of its information, and that was kind of like, as you said, Josh, A story. B story was Tilly and her little mutant May doing stuff to her. So what was some of your thoughts? I thought these were well-played stories that did tie into each other.
Well, it was very Star Trek. I mean, in the sense that they were, meeting the anomaly, that they, that they thought they were getting. I mean, there's so many great TNG episodes like this, like the one with the space baby, where Geordi and the holographic engineer have to figure out how to fix. You know, they think the space mother is attacking them, but she's just pregnant, and then they have to wean the big giant blob baby off the Enterprise. So I like it when you see these episodes, which is pretty standard fare for Star Trek, but where they meet this anomaly and it looks like it's going to kill them, but in reality it's something really innocuous and even good, like it was last night.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. Another great typical sort of Star Trek thing is that the anomaly has some effect on a particular character, as it did last night with Saru. It kind of kicked him into his, as that thing was dying, it was sort of overwhelming his Kelpian sense of death. And throwing him into a death spiral, which was interesting, and his ganglia were out the whole time. And
if everybody hasn't watched Saru's short Trek episode, you need to watch that because they referenced it. And Alex Kurtzman mentioned in one of the Ready Room episodes that I was catching that they are going to go to Saru's planet in an upcoming episode. So this was, a lot of people are like, I don't get it, why they did it. Okay, you just take a chill pill because we're going to go to that planet, and I'm sure we're going to end up in a very, very interesting General Order 1 Prime Directive debate, because you can see it happening. Saru and his sister or something, or Burnham's going to be involved. And again, that is classic Star Trek. How many of the episodes dealt with we're going down to a culture that we've screwed up in the past, or this culture is going to kill itself, but do we interfere? Do we not? And that's what they're setting up as a very emotional episode. But I did think, although very predictable, I don't think anybody really believed Saru was going to die.
It was what it reminded me of, John, of course, was the end of Star Trek 2.
Absolutely.
I thought they did that good of a job on it, where it was not, and again, it wasn't shoehorned in. I say that, I mean, at the end of Into Darkness, the Spock Kirk death scene was kind of shoehorned in, like, oh, let's shoehorn this in. This was organically put in. I felt the emotions were good. And it wasn't this. It was like the end of Star Trek 2, where it was genuine. Like I still tear up a little bit at the end of Star Trek 2, and I've seen
they're powerful scenes, and so well done to the team that put that together.
I thought
they
did a great job.
So let's talk about and that was all great, and the lovey-dovey. I like that stuff, but I love.
Before we go on, John, before we go on, before we leave this plot point, I just want to say I don't know if this is going to garner judgment from you or from our viewers. But is it weird that as Saru was dying, I got a little hungry? I'm just saying.
Well, it was cheeseburgers mentioned at the first part of the show, and then you got a Kelpian with his thing, and I can see that happening.
I mean, they did eat some Kelpians in the last season, so I'm calling myself out here. I was a little hungry. I have to admit.
If number one had been on the show and she walked in with the jalapeno sauce, right after the death, that would have been a little too soon. Denise Jet Reno, I with all my heart, I have adopted her into my Star Trek engineering because I love Scotty. Geordi I liked, but I really like Scotty, and I'll tell you, Reno is really winning her way into my heart. She just plays it so well to Nicaro. She just does a great job, and I loved, and I want to get your opinion on this, and I'd love to have your opinion, for those of you watching us, obviously, is I love where they got into a good old-fashioned 2019 political debate about the environmental versus the old school, kind of like, wind power versus, gasoline, that the dilithium crystal mining is hurting the environment, but yet now we find out that the spore drive and the mushrooms, and I want mushrooms on my pizza, please, is hurting the environment.
Right.
This was great.
Well, I think Trexpertise has a video on how science fiction's a commentary on the current times, which is worth seeing.
Yeah. Great. They do a great job.
Yeah, I thought it was organic, and no pun intended, organic in the sense of the mushrooms.
And of course, there was that whole thing with the power screwdriver or power drill that bothered me a little bit. Josh, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, what was up with that, man? It was like they're making her sing the song, and then he drills into her head and puts in the. I mean, I understand why they were doing it, but that was a little odd. Like, I mean, geez, I don't know. It just seems like you could put, nano things into people's heads at that point in without drilling into their skull. I mean, with a drill.
Well, I didn't quite.
I don't know. It was an odd moment. I mean, I thought it was a good. I didn't dislike it, but I just thought, like, what's going on here?
You know, we're not like, we haven't drank the lemonade. There's not everything on Discovery, and not everything in any of the Star Trek series is perfect. But for overall, this was a good Star Trek episode. I really enjoyed it. I think the characters again are getting developed better and better. I thought too. Again, for me, there's a little bit of a military thing with me. The moment where Saru and Burnham are leaving the bridge, and it's assuming for the last time, and Pike and the crew stand. Oh, that was cool. That was a moment cool for me. Yeah. That was oh my gosh, this really is neat. Reminiscent of Star Trek 2, like you said, where you think he's not really gonna die, but you're like, boy, you guys are sure selling it pretty good. That was a great moment, and again, just showing how much.
We're talking about two different things, by the way. Back in '82 when Star Trek 2 came out, we all thought Spock was dead forever. I mean, that was.
I wasn't quite sure. I was a little bit.
Well, I mean, they did the soft landing, but in this one, I thought, and Into Darkness too, I knew that they, I kind of figured that Saru was going to survive, but they played it really well, like he wasn't, and I thought, well, maybe there's a chance that they're going to kill him off in the Game of Thrones era, where they kill off characters, Well,
here's what you didn't expect is, and that why I didn't think he was going to die was because, and again, I have a horrible memory, so I apologize. I can't remember actors' names, but Saru and Burnham and Stamets and Tilly were all singing karaoke on the CBS app last week. They debuted it in the singing karaoke in cars. So he's in that episode singing karaoke, so they're not going to kill him off anytime soon.
Doug Jones is the actor's name.
So, real quick, Josh, it looks like next week Discovery gets into some serious stuff with, I don't know, they showed, it looks like it's sinking in some kind of a nebula, and I still don't see any indication Spock is anywhere near this show yet.
Well, maybe they're dangling him in front of us for a reason. Who knows?
Well, let's not forget the big carrot they dangled in front of us last year, which was the Defiant. We thought, the Defiant's going to be a cornerstone of this Terran universe, and they're going to take the Defiant back, and nothing. They just, but it's, right. One other thing I'll mention that ties into Spock and the cancellation of the show. The Super Bowl ran last weekend, and in the middle of the multi-million-dollar airtime, they did run a spot for Star Trek Discovery and the Twilight Zone on the CBS All Access app. Remember, there's not a lot of promotion going out about this show, so that's CBS's fault. So the fact that they ran a 15 or 10-second tease about Star Trek Discovery during the Super Bowl, you don't do that if you're canceling the show. So again, to those of you who are spreading this stuff, it's just talk about the show and the good things on the show. Stop trying to pretend you know things about things you don't know.
John, as you can see, I have a Darth Vader shirt on today, and it says, "I find your lack of faith disturbing." That's what we're talking about.
Well, I realize
true. I realize we're a Star Trek podcast, but I think that this is a very appropriate shirt for what you're saying.
I appreciate that, and please keep sending us your comments on the We've monitored it all: Twitter, Instagram. The YouTube channel is getting a lot of traction. So if you want to make comments, tell us we're idiots or agree with us, whichever. We welcome your comments.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us in the Neutral Zone. This is your pal Josh and John in the Neutral Zone. And we'll see you next time when we talk about Episode 5 of Discovery. Live long and prosper.